So do they have to be like an hour and a half or they can be less? Because I feel like we're gonna run out of things to say.
I honestly, I don't know. Just, okay, so it says it's recording. So hopefully it saves somewhere. Okay. So we have to start it with the group activities, no?
Yes.
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. So what were they for the first one? That's weird.
So the first one's on recovered memories. And so I guess I'll read the case to you guys and then we'll review the facts after that.
Okay.
So Rose was a 19-year-old college student who was experiencing bulimia and depression. Rose began seeing a therapist, Dr. May, for this issue. Dr. May told Rose and her mother, Stephanie, that bulimia was usually caused by incest and that 60 to 70% of her patients who experienced eating disorders had been sexually abused. So Rose began to believe that her father may have raped her. Therefore, Dr. May referred Rose to a psychiatrist. The psychiatrist administered Rose a dose of hypnotic drug, sodium amidol, I think it is, and began to recover memories. During the process, Rose recovered memories of sexual abuse by her father, John. Then Rose, Stephanie, and May confronted John and accused him of sexually abusing Rose from the time she was 5 until she was 18. Rose said these memories were triggered when she was 19, when Gary looked at Rose in a sexually charged way during Christmas. After the accusation, Stephanie got divorced and John lost his family and his job. There was no evidence that John did not commit the crime, but there was also no evidence that he did. There are two possible lawsuits that could arise from this. Either one, Rose could sue John for sexual abuse, or John could sue May for implanting memories. As you're all experts of memory now, your group has been approached by the court to provide some background information about recovered memory and your opinion on these two cases. The legal standard for evidence in this jurisdiction is based on Frye standards, which is scientific methods established in research and generally accepted by the community. So now it's asking us, sorry. So so we're supposed to look at the facts of the case now. So the facts of the case are that, well, Rose, she's a 19-year-old, and she's suing her father for sexual abuse, and this is supposed to be happening between the ages of 5 and 18. And the reason she got those memories is because she went through some kind of therapy, and there's no evidence that he did commit the crime or that he didn't. And it's asking us if Rose could sue John for this sexual abuse, or if it could go the other way where John could sue his family for pretty much implementing memories on her daughter. So I think I should ask you guys, should Rose be allowed to sue John?
I would say yes, Sorry.
Yeah.
So I would say yes, just because like, I don't know, I feel like you can pretty much sue anybody for anything. It's just a matter of like, will she win, you know?
Yeah. Actually, I had a question because I don't know if it was a typo, but who was Gary? Because I know John was the dad, right? But then it mentioned something about like when Gary looks at Rose that you know, she suddenly has all these things come back to her. But who was this guy? Was he like a family member or
John?
no? Gary. Because in the paper, I could have sworn I read Gary.
Oh
Unless
yeah,
I'm, yeah. Because did they mention who that was or no?
I guess I don't think so. I think it is a typo because
Yeah.
I think it's supposed to say John.
Yeah, I don't see a Gary.
Oh, yeah. I don't know, but I don't. I mean, this is also kind of weird to me because the doctor mentions like how she has like 60 to 70% of her patients saying that this is a result of incest, but I'm like wondering um what research she has behind that. Like, I wonder if she even gave you know, her clients any of the research that she found, or if she's just like maybe projecting something. Because the kind of hypnosis she went under, I don't know if it's even, because I remember reading somewhere in the textbook that it said that some, I guess, forms of legal systems in other countries don't accept that kind of, I guess, recovered memories for evidence. And to me, that would seem a reason why she shouldn't really be able to sue him, especially if in the case it said that she suffered the abuse from ages 5 to 18 and she's really what, like 19 now? So that's like a year, and to me it just seems really weird that she wouldn't be able to remember something. I know that like we've talked about how, you know, memory is strange and whatnot, but if it's something that like emotionally charged, I feel that you would remember it if it went on for that long and it was kind of still recent. So I'm not really on the side that she, just because of like maybe the lack of like valid evidence or even like the research that she's pulling up.
Yeah, I agree with you because it does say that after the Dr. May told her about the research that she began to believe that her father had done that to her. And I understand maybe when she was young, maybe that would have happened, but to be 18 and not really remember, it's like that's really impossible unless you really buried it really deep or something.
Yeah,
But
especially because she's like 19.
yeah,
Like that would have had to happen like a year ago.
Mm-hmm. And to me, unless the dad like used, you know, some kind of, I don't know if there's any drugs that like suppress your memory like that, but unless he like was drugging her while he was doing this stuff, like I don't think that it would be the case to where she doesn't remember like it at all, especially like I said, like it's something like so emotionally charged. So it's just weird that the doctor is like, oh, here's this thing, like causation, instead of asking her like maybe her own body image issues. It's just kind of a stretch.
So the second question is, if Rose were to sue John, should evidence of Rose recovered memories be allowed in court? It's going to be that 60 to 70% of her patients were sexually abused.
Oh my God, I can finally hear. I'm so sorry, guys.
You're good.
I can do it with my phone, not with my laptop. I don't know why.
That's good that you got it working. I guess for the question, I would say like maybe not, just because like I said, there's a lot of different like court systems that aren't allowing that kind of evidence, and like hypnosis is just a really weird process in general. So Mm.
So question C says, what concerns do we have about allowing the memories? And what concerns do we have about not allowing the memories?
Mm. I mean, I think you could go either way on this, right? It's like the whole thing of should you believe anybody who says like that they've been a victim of abuse blindly or not? I think that's maybe like what it comes down to, whether or not the courts would even accept it in that kind of sense. And because to me, it just looks like the doctor's focusing on solely that instead of everything else that accompanies maybe like anorexia or bulimia. That's what I think that it appears.
Yeah, and then what if they're like reconstructed, where like, I don't know if it was in the book or in the article I chose, but it said that sometimes when reconstructed memories happen, in this case with like sexual abuse, sometimes like the what's it called, like for example her, like she could be confusing memories that happen in a movie or in a story that was told to her, or in some series she's been watching for years or something like that. It said that sometimes they found that they use the memory like it crosses like together like this. I don't know how to word it, but like she, like I say it.
It's interfering with her memories. Oh, what just happened?
That's one of the concerns I saw, that so if it's a reconstructed memory, like they had to see what she's reconstructing it from. Like, is it from the therapist alone, or was it like her watching a movie and she remembered, or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
But couldn't it also be that the experience was so traumatic that she decided to like kind of get amnesia to forget about the experience?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think like that's just the major issue, is that we're not really going to be sure like 100% if the memories are even real to begin with. And I guess because of the way that she recovered them, like one thing was saying, like you have that like, oh well, we don't know if it's interfering, like maybe the doctors, oh well, you know, this might be a cause, just immediately I guess jumping to conclusions that this is the causation for her disorder, instead of doing like a thorough evaluation. So you have that kind of like, what's the word, like I guess duality. So it's just a hard line to like maybe decide what's even valid or not.
Right.
Do you think Rose would be successful in her case? If so, how much would you award her in her damages?
I don't think she will be successful just because they weren't able to find any evidence against her father actually doing that to her. So even though she says she had those memories, there wasn't anything to show like, oh, he actually did something to her. So I don't think she would have been successful in that area.
They also need like physical evidence, you know, details in the story, something like that could maybe help her, or just based off that. I think they need more evidence.
I agree.
Exactly, like, yeah, there's too little like to go on. I think right now it's kind of just you're pointing fingers and you don't have anything to back it up with. So I don't think she would be really rewarded anything.
For lawsuit number 2 is John versus Dr. May. Should John be allowed to sue Dr. May?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, yeah.
Because he didn't only lose like his job, but his family too, and well, he lost both. I think like if he's not going to be able to talk to his family no more, I mean, he should at least be able to keep his job because now like he has to go to like find another job, and what if they ask him why did you lose your other job, and then or something that because I'm pretty sure like on background investigations they ask you have you ever been to court and why, and imagine him having to put that he had a potential sexual abuse charge against him, then that might build some what's it called, some negative consequences on him looking for another job. They might not hire him just because he went through that court or through that process. That's why I think he should be able to sue.
Yeah, I mean, it's defamation anyway, just like no matter how you paint it, like, you know, and then like you said, like the whole he lost his family. I mean, that would just be such an emotional turmoil, I guess, especially if he was innocent in this whole thing.
They would ruin his
So,
reputation.
yeah.
And it would also kind of put a stop to the therapist because like just saying kind of like leading a person to think that because they have this like eating disorder, it's because of sexual abuse, like you need to stop her from doing that, you know, like because it's not always true.
Yeah, that could, I mean, because in that case, she would be sued for what, like malpractice almost? Or like unethical use of her job, I guess. Mm.
So the second question is, if John were to sue May, should John be allowed to use testimony about recovered memories?
Yes.
Yeah, especially because like we've been saying the validity and oh well, what if it's not true?
Yeah.
Hold on, guys, I'm gonna move rooms.
This all made him like, you know, change his life completely, lose his job, lose his family. So I think it's a pretty good testimony to sue her.
Yeah. Oh. Okay. Sorry guys, if you see me just like walking around, I had to leave.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, there's just like, I feel like a testimony about recovered memories is essential because honestly, I didn't really know much about recovered memories myself before this class, you know? So I think to educate other people would help his case.
Yeah, exactly. Just based off of like there's so much like inconclusive things, and I think bringing maybe awareness or like a drive to research more on this stuff, like he should be able to like use the position that he was put in for like, I guess, good, especially if he was harmed so much. Like I guess if he was accused of something, like maybe he should have the ability to turn it around for himself if he was innocent, right? Because
Do you think John would be successful in his case?
Yes, because he was like, if he was innocent again, he was falsely accused. Obviously.
yeah, I think he would, just because of the lack of evidence. I mean, you can't just throw somebody in jail if you don't have anything to back it up with. So just, I guess, I mean, in that case, like he has the advantage of like, oh, well, if the court doesn't find Rose's, I guess, like her recovered memories as valid, then John would not automatically win, but he would have like a higher chance of winning his case.
So how much would you award him?
Probably equal to what he lost, no? Or like even
like
more?
his salary for his job, probably.
Yeah.
For how long the trial was long. I mean, how long the trial lasted. If it lasted 2 months, and I should, at least what he was gonna get, he would have kept his job.
Yeah.
I guess court fines and all that stuff too.
Yeah,
attorney.
probably a little bit more than what he makes because of the court
Yeah.
fine, the lawyer, all of that.
So,
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, the bad thing is, I guess, like, I don't know how you would, because I guess the financial part of it is the easier part to discuss, but maybe, like, I don't want to say putting him through therapy, but just, like, you know, making sure that maybe thinking about, like, how his mental health would be impacted by it too, I think would also be important. So that might be a note to look at for the courts, but I don't think the legal system pays much attention to that, so who knows?
Yeah, because he did lose his family, so how do you pay a person back for losing that? I mean, a job, you could probably find another one, but his family didn't want to be with him, and you really can't put a price on that. So it would be really hard to say how much we would give him in that case.
Yeah.
I think the psychiatrist is also to be blamed. She should be like, I don't know, like, I don't know what they do to psychiatrists, like revoke their license or something,
Mm-hmm.
because she's jumping to conclusions because just that, because she has anorexia, it leads to like her being raped. Like, that's a very huge jump, and she shouldn't be making those accusations.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think
Not
they
with
would
more of it.
probably revoke her.
Yeah.
Was that the last part for the activity for that discussion? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Oh. So would whoever's like, I guess, Martin, you would present your article, right?
yeah.
Okay.
We're doing that now on the next thing, whatever. Or-
Huh?
Are we doing that now on the next recording? Because don't we have
I
like
think I honestly don't like, I don't know how this works, if it's on like a timer or anything. Because the last time I did a Zoom meeting, it lasted for a long time, so I don't know how that works. I guess we could just see where this thing stops and then just continue where we left off if it makes us make another meeting.
Sure.
Oh yeah, if it stops, yeah.
Yeah.
So my article was titled my article was titled Due Process and the Admission of Expert Evidence on Recovered Memory in Child Sexual Abuse Cases in America. So pretty much this article is talking about like the case that we just went through. It's talking about like what kinds of evidence does it allow, and then what kinds of evidence it's not fair both for the defense or for the prosecution team. So pretty much it said that recovered memories are recovered memory are those memories that you can't for some time access. And I guess like the lectures explain where certain cues or certain reminders, I guess you get those memories back. I mean, and then it describes that as dissociative amnesia. So pretty much what the article was saying here is that how is somebody gonna forget something that was so traumatic in such a small amount of time or large amount of time? It also says that, like for example, how we in the lectures how we said that sometimes you block those memories from you reminding yourself from those traumatic events. But the author also says that it takes work to do that. So you're constantly blocking those memories. So how are you not gonna like remember? So like let's say I went through some times when I was like 7, 8 years old. I'm gonna keep blocking those memories like throughout my teen years. Like it's pretty much saying that too. So it asks the courts why are they allowing this, or if traumatic events are not forgotten quick, or they're remembered for a long time. And then it says that also it argues that reconstructed memory most likely representing inaccurate testimony. So like in her case, in the case that we just reviewed, like her, how she didn't have proof that it really happened. Like if she would have, in the article it says that if she would have remembered those memories by herself, let's say she was just at her house and she just suddenly remembered, then those could be more accurate than someone telling you, hey, this is a sign of you getting abused. Then that's more like a reconstructive, so it could lead to be more false. It also uh, it also says that it argues that there's no way to proving again that what she's saying is true. Like there's no, like, I don't know, I guess lie detector test, or there's just no instrument that shows that a testimony is true. So if it's just based on memory, then like the jury has to like rely on some expert, I guess advice. So it argues about that too. So then it argues about the like what the expert's gonna argue during the court process. So let's say, well, we have a jury, we have the judge, we have the defense team, and we have the prosecution team. So now the defense, let's say, asks for like an expert's advice. They call a psychiatrist, or they call whoever's the expert on that recovered memory. So they say that instead of these experts showing the conclusions of their other studies, I guess, like let's say the psychiatrist who told, I think her name was Rose, right? Rose, that 60 to 70% of her patients who had bulimia, went through some sexual abuse. So those are the results, right? But like right here, this article is arguing that they shouldn't go by the conclusion, that they should go based on the methodology that they use. So a methodology is like, how did they conduct their study? So let's say, I don't know. So I lost my example, but let me think of it real quick. So methodology, like let's say, okay, so like let's say a study is studying people who got their memory without help, without therapy. How are they going to use that methodology with someone who got help getting those memories? In this case, in Rose's case, she got help by a psychiatrist. And then what if the expert team shows the results from someone who got their memory back by themselves, like they didn't need no help? So if that evidence and is shown to the jury, then they're like not showing something that relates to the case, because she didn't get her memory back by herself, like she needed help. So that's something that this article is arguing. Also, it argues that so it also argues that about prior records. So I read there was a case that this person was accusing someone of sexual abusing them. So they they called an expert, right, like a memory expert, and they ended up sentencing this individual to prison time because of the confession that the lady was given, and the jury used their prior record against him. So he had a sexual abuse assault when I think he was 16 years old, and this happened when he was 24, so it was like 7 years apart. And he didn't know that those charges were being charged against him because it wasn't him. It turns out that after evidence, like DNA evidence, this happened during like the time where DNA wasn't used as much in courts. So they implemented his prior records, and the jury used the expert's opinion and the record, and they accused him, but it was never him. It never happened. Once they used DNA testing or whatever, they never found that he actually raped her, so he was released. So that's what this article is arguing too, that if it's a reconstructed memory, then prior records shouldn't be allowed, or should be like thought about twice to be allowed. So that's one thing it's arguing too. And then it also argues that, for example, I'm not sure what it's called, but it was in the lecture, and it said that in between the years and 3 to 5 or 3 to 4, I don't remember what time gap it was. It said that we don't usually remember that time of our lives, like, because I guess we have a different perspective of life, I guess. But like her in the case that she said, it started when she was 5 years old, and it's been proven by psychiatrists and scientists that it's hard for us to remember that time of our lives. So there should be like an age gap where that can be, that someone can be guilty of that in that age gap. So for example, Rose, if she would have said it started when I was 4 years old to whatever, she said 18, then the time for her to remember about an event when she was 4 years old, like, it's very unlikely, and it's been proven by scientists and psychiatrists. So that's one thing that the article argues too. And then it also says that memory recovery in therapy pose a particular difficulty, since the goal of the therapy is to make that person better, like mentally, and not to go back in time and realize what they went through. So the article is arguing that, well, yeah, that a therapy is to get someone like mentally right, and not for them to like travel back in time. And then so now the article also argues that the jury might go with the expert's advice instead of like the facts of the case. So let's say in Rose's case, the jury would have felt like bad for Rose, and she's saying, oh yeah, 60 to 70% of my patients, they've been sexually abused. So the jury's gonna be like, oh, like 60 to 70% is pretty high, right? Like it's overweight. So they might believe Rose just because of that, because she's saying, hey, 60 to 70% are sexually abused. So instead of looking at the facts, they're gonna go by the expert's advice, and that also like alters the case. And that's one argument that the article says too. And then, well, yeah, and then it just continues saying that reconstructed memories are not that reliable. And yeah, those are pretty much all the arguments that the article uses. So my 5 questions are, okay, so my first question is, what are some reasons why people block or ignore memories for quite a long time?
I think people might be either blocking or ignoring certain memories because they're not ready to, I guess, understand or they don't understand why it happened, so they don't want to know about it, and they just rather think of them as non-existent instead of actually confronting them and moving past them.
Yeah, I think like it would be suppression, or like I guess repression, or maybe it's just too difficult to deal with at the moment, so you would want to like ignore it maybe for as long as you can. Or I guess maybe a metaphor would be forgetting embarrassing moments in your life. Like we don't normally think of those things because they're not pleasant to remember.
So my second question is, science has not developed an instrument to detect whether a person is lying or between the facts and the confession. Because of this, do you think there should be like an age restriction where somebody can accuse someone regarding a reconstructed memory? So pretty much like, should be there like a time gap where somebody could say that it closes like the accused, like, do I, do that make sense? Like, uh,
I think like so you're saying like between the time that it happens and like the time that you remember, you mean?
yeah, so like between the time it happened, so let's say it happened between, well, in her case, let's say between the ages of 5 and 10, and then she decides to accuse 30 years from that. So when she's 50, she's accusing something that happened like 30 years ago. You get me? So,
Yeah.
so let's say it happened between 5 and 10, and then this person's 50 now, so she's accusing someone about something that happened 40 years ago. You think that's like appropriate or not?
Yes, I do, because what's it called? Some victims sometimes, like of rape and stuff like that, they take a while to like, well, talk about it because they're embarrassed or it's too traumatic to like talk about. And when they're finally like ready to talk about it, they actually want to take action and like have the person that like did something bad to them pay the consequences. And I think there shouldn't be a time gap, that it's okay for them to take their time.
Yeah, especially if you're like a minor. I mean, I think kids are able to be like manipulated.
So unlike
or,
the Fry standard, the Daubert standard asks to look at the methodology used in a scientific method instead of the conclusion. Do you agree with that approach or not? So it's saying like, do you rather the experts state the conclusions or how he did the study to the jury so they could make their decision if he's guilty or not? Does that make sense?
Wait, so like
And then my other question is, do you believe a jury should be informed about the
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah. Do you believe a jury should be informed about the inaccuracies of a scientific method research? Why or why not? So pretty much like there's a study, and then should the jury know its limitations?
I mean, probably because
I think yes, so they can make the the proper conclusions about it, the right to give their opinion by having all the facts.
Yeah, like I think the limitations would be really important for it in general.
And then my last question is, which recovery method is likely to be false? Memory that's recovered simultaneously, or memory recovered by therapy?
Maybe like
So which one's more accurate? Memory that comes to us with no help, or memory that is reconstructed by a therapist or psychiatrist?
just like simultaneously because
I would say with no help,
yeah.
because I think like if a therapist tries to bring back a memory, like it's gonna be distorted or it's gonna go like along the lines of what she is like along the words that she's saying, you know?
Mhm.
So like if she's saying stuff like that, saying that she was raped, then she's probably gonna say things that like are along those lines, you know?
Yeah, like you're not gonna have any interference. It's just gonna be like your own thoughts and your own
Yeah, so those are my 5 questions, and all right.
Valerie, I think your audio's not working because we can't hear you when you speak.
Oh no. Okay. Let me see. Now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, it was probably my headphones. Sorry, guys. Okay.
Okay, so my essay is called, or not my essay, but I forgot what it's called. The one that I found was called The Reality of Recovered Memories, and it's kind of similar to the case that we just saw. So what they were trying to do is they tried to show how when you recover memories outside of therapy, they're more reliable than when you recover them in therapy. So what they did is that they would examine how surprised the individuals who were going to therapy were when they recall the memory of being abused. And it showed that when they were outside of therapy, they were more surprised and it was more reliable because they had more details than when they recovered the memory in their therapy. So in the therapy, it was just more like straight, no details. And when it was outside of therapy, it had more details. So it was more reliable in that way. So what their results were is that when you remember things outside of therapy, they're more reliable and they're more valid than when you remember them in therapy. So what they were trying to do is to make sure that when a memory was used in a court system, then it would be one that was used that you remembered outside of therapy than inside of therapy. So it was kind of like how in Rose's case, she remembered everything when she was doing the recovered memory therapy, and it didn't seem like she remembered anything outside of it. So I know that that could have played a part of her remembering things that maybe weren't there in her memory. Like I have a personal experience where when I was about 11, I started losing my hair a lot. So I started going to therapy. And the therapist actually told my mom that I was sexually abused when I was young by my father. But the thing is that she said that I was abused by him since probably 3 years old to when I was about 8. But my father didn't come into the picture until I was 9. So, or 10, I believe. So there was no contact between him or anything. So that couldn't be possible. I couldn't have been abused by him or anybody else. So we stopped going to that therapist. But that was his first instinct to see like, oh, I was abused. That's why you're losing your hair at the age of 11. It turns out I was just losing my hair because I'm a very nervous person and I don't like talking in front of people. So at that age, that's when you do more presentations and things like that. So I was getting really stressed out because of that. So yeah, so I do have my 5 questions. Okay. So my first question is, do you think that when people are doing recovered memory therapy, using, do you think that when they use a drug, it will be needed? I'm sorry, I read it wrong, sorry. Do you think that when you're trying to recover your memories, is it better to use a drug or should it not be used at all? Like in Rose's case, they used the hypnotic drug sodium amytal for her to be able to recover her memories.
So I say no because drugs don't really like they impair you, you know? So how are you supposed to bring back memories 100% if you're not 100%? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like memory might be like distorted or something because while the psychiatrist is influencing her to think like you were raped by your dad, and the having the drug doesn't help either.
Yeah. I mean, in general, because like there's so many side effects to like different drugs, and then maybe if they even use like a concoction of drugs, that would just maybe make it worse. Or I guess I guess I think it would be like one of those like medicine infomercials where they start like, oh, it helps with this, but then you have like all these different side effects, so you can't really, I think at that point you wouldn't really be able to draw like a causation between the two of them. So I think in general it would just be a bad idea to use drugs.
My second question is, do you believe specific cues are needed for us to remember things? Or do you think we could just remember them without the cues in general?
Like,
Like
I would say
in,
both, no? I mean, sometimes I guess you could remember stuff like out of nowhere without searching for it. Like, I don't know, let's say when you're trying to remember a song, like at the moment you don't remember, but then like out of nowhere, like it comes back to you. So I guess it depends. Well, yeah, I would say both. Just with the right cues, I guess you retrieve that information, and then sometimes you don't get them, but then it comes back like suddenly, like so. Yeah, I would say both.
Yeah. I think so too, just because even like cues can fail you, so it's not like it's a guarantee that it's gonna give you the right um like it's not gonna bring the information you need up to the certain threshold to like activate. So I mean, if you're sitting there in a test and you made up all these like mnemonics or whatever to remember the information, it could still fail you. But then, after you're like, oh my God, like that's what that question was. So it just, I guess, depends. But I mean, I don't think it would ever hurt to have a cue, maybe. So,
my third question is, do you believe that we can ever figure out how, if the recalled memory are actual memories that you stored away, or if it's just something that you think might have happened? Like if we are able to figure out the difference between the two.
honestly, I would say like, unless scientists make up some way to like actually look inside our brain, I don't know, just like I know that seems far-fetched, but even like me like looking back at like certain memories from like high school, which at least for me it wasn't that long ago, and then I talked to some of my other friends about it and they're like, no, that didn't happen. So then it leaves me confused and like, doubting my own memories. So I guess there, at least right now, like I said, like there might not really be like a surefire way to know if something is accurate or not.
Yep, unless you like document it, which I think hardly ever anyone does.
Yeah.
Do you think specific conditions can be put in place to make sure that the chances of individuals being manipulated to think that they experience abuse when younger can be decreased in general?
I would think so, just like having therapists like do thorough questionnaires instead of, because I don't know if this is like the correct term to use, but the way that I guess Rose was questioned, it sounded just like an interrogation to me, like, oh, well, you're like this because you were abused. So they had so much confidence in it that it didn't give a chance for any other explanation to like kind of go through. So I think instead of just jumping to the worst possible well, maybe that's not the word, but
you know, like that kind of extreme conclusion of, oh, this is because of abuse, like that there needs to be steps that would build up to that, just to make sure you've kind of had like a checklist that you went through before anybody can say, oh, well, yeah, this is because of abuse, or like even questioning, you know, like family members that might have been around that, or any friends. Like I know sometimes it's really, really secretive, but sometimes like maybe you can pick up on like, oh, well, that behavior was a red flag or something like that. So I think those kinds of things would just diminish the chances of like, you know, going straight towards abuse.
Yeah, I think she makes a really good point, because they just thought like the worst, or one of the worst case scenarios, because she wasn't really like questioned thoroughly, like she said. It was more like interrogating her. Like they wanted her to accuse him. They weren't really letting her like think for herself. They just wanted like him to pay the consequences for her bulimia, was it? Or anorexia?
Yes.
I think it was both or either.
It
It was
was
one of the
and
two.
depression.
Depression.
Okay, so we do have the doctor-patient confidentiality. So that's to protect the patient. But what if the doctor was the one that was manipulating the individual? Can we, or should we add a step to change that, to be able to stop it in time before families are torn apart by false accusations?
I mean, like I don't know if this is how it goes, but at least like whenever I go to therapy, like my therapist, like at the beginning, they do run you through that. But then I think at a certain point, like they have to, or I don't, because I go to the one here at YouTube, so like I'm wondering if it's different for like every like place you would go to. But I think they might like submit reports of like how a client's progressing to like a certain maybe review board. Because I think the confidentiality thing is in case like other external sources want to come in and try to gain like that information, but maybe like it within the same like company, I guess that they would have the ability to like check to make sure that the doctor is doing like, you know, what they're supposed to be doing, instead of like influencing the way that the patient's going. Because I mean, if you have somebody going into therapy for like a couple years or something and they're not showing any progression, that's not really a good sign, either like on the part of the client themselves that they're refusing to do whatever homework is assigned to them, or like on the doctor for doing something wrong. So I would think that you would have like some kind of review board, at least within the company, to make sure like they won't tell anybody else, but they're doing it for like the client's benefit, I guess.
Yeah, I agree with you. Probably like an extra step that I think probably psychologists or psychiatrists do is they talk to a colleague to see like the best approach to like fix a client's issues or something like that. So one, like they're keeping the patient's like confident. I can't pronounce that word. Also, but they're talking to somebody else, so they know like I'm not making them think a certain way, manipulating them. So I think that's a good step.
Yeah. Because I'm not sure if it's you have to just keep the identity a secret, or if it's like the entire. Because at least I know, for example, I guess with like the FBI, like you can't talk about work at all to anybody, but I wonder if it's like the same thing with therapy. Like if you can say, oh, hey, you know, my client, one of my clients is having issues with like eating disorders, like what do you suggest? Or like, am I making stuff, you know, go in a certain direction here, I guess. Sorry. Sorry guys, I'm gonna have to like hold this for like a second.
She did want us to discuss two questions. also that she made herself. So one of them was, can memories actually be forgotten and recovered?
So like they can be
Um,
forgotten, but they're never truly forgotten because they can be recovered, you know?
Yeah, I mean, because we have the whole like, oh, somebody, because it's like I was saying, like with the whole test thing, like that, to me, that's already like what, yeah, like you have that memory of that piece of information and then you forget it, but then it comes back. And obviously, like, I think it would vary in degree, but ultimately, like, yeah, like you would be able to recover memory.
I believe one of the lecturers said that um, they're not really forgotten. We just can't access them. I guess the meaning behind them are it's not so important that we can access them so easily. So yeah, I think
Yeah, I think you have a good point. Like they don't have no value to us anymore. So we just forget them in a way. But if we need to, we can recover them.
Yeah.
And then, should evidence of recovered memory be allowed in court?
I guess maybe it would depend on the way that they recovered the memory.
Yeah.
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 And I think as long as like the testimony of recovered memories, like having an expert educate whoever's like the judge or the jury, like having them educate about recovered memories, like I think that should be fine.
Mm-hmm.
I think they should, but they shouldn't be like the only testimony. I feel like they should have more evidence. They shouldn't just
Yeah.
rely.
Yeah, like I don't think maybe necessarily somebody should like that shouldn't be like the most crucial part of it. Like I think DNA or like other I guess types of evidence should be more weighted in the actual trial.
I think like how it was mentioned before, how you tell the jury how you obtained the recovered memories. I think that would be good too, because that way you would be able to see if it was done correctly, if it was a little like you were pushing them to say something different.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's it for recovered memories.
Yeah. I don't know like what time we started, but I know it's been more than 40 minutes. Because I
maybe
think
20, I think.
I don't because I mean we started I think around like 6:30 like on here.
Yeah.
So do we just go on to the next discussion? Or
No,
do
I
we
think we
start
should do
the
another
video?
video for that.
Okay, so
Because it
I'm
has to be
hosting
a
the
separate
meeting.
link.
Wait, what?
I'm hosting the meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
So then would we
Um,
start recording this one and like try to submit it for the video one?
Yes.
Okay.
So everyone is recording? Because I don't think I am.
No, I'm not recording.
No,
No, I
was,
have
Oh,
mine
okay.
recording.
Also, we only record our discussion.
This wasn't my discussion, but I have mine recorded, so I don't know who wants to submit it.
I could submit it.
Okay. You recorded it, right? Or
And no, I recorded the first part, but not the. Because when you said to stop, I stopped it and I didn't put it back.
oh, okay. Well, I recorded it. So I'll probably see if I can just send the video to you so you can.
Okay.
And if not, just tell me and I'll try to submit. Okay, so I'll stop recording the session and then we should just move on to the second meeting. Or
So do we leave or no?
Well, I think in order for you to stay